What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I am back with another video. This time once again, we're going to look at the 2022 MVP race that involves Giannis, Jokic, as well as Joel Embiid. All three guys undoubtedly are worthy candidates for winning the award. So in this video today, I'm not going to make their MVP case, but what I am going to do, I'm going to expose analysts and their flawed logic for one player being the MVP over the other. Once again, the season's not over, and any of these players could win the award, but right now in the moment, I want to expose ESPN's analysts and their terrible MVP takes. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Now, first up, we turn to First Take on ESPN, and the analyst we have is Marcus Spears making his case for Joel Embiid being the MVP over Nikola Jokic.
You can hoop. Tell us. Who you got?
I'm going Joel. I'm going Joel because I think Joel can get a bucket anytime in a basketball game. And look, Jokic and the way he passes the basketball changes the dynamic when we have this conversation because they're not asked to do the same thing. But I see ability, and the ability of Joel Embiid to me is up there as far as talent with any big man that's ever played the game, and stepping out to three-point range and being consistent over 30% from behind the line.
Now, stopping the clip right there, let's address 3 points from Marcus Spears. First up, he says Joel Embiid, he's just that guy. He can get you a bucket whenever he wants, from the mid-range, the post, even the three. Think about those lines and what he's saying. Is there any other center in the NBA, maybe in Denver, who can do all that and more? Also, when referring to Joel Embiid, he looks at his raw talent as one of the best bigs of all time. That exact same line, being an all-time great big, can be applied to Jokic in the exact same way. And lastly, for Embiid, he points out his shooting, specifically from three. Again, the guy in Denver does the exact same thing offensively, shooting the ball above 35% when it comes to threes. And when looking at these NBA analysts and their MVP takes, really look deep and examine what they're actually saying. In that first clip, Marcus Spears gave no real evidence of Embiid having better stats, better numbers, being a more valuable player. What he did, he threw out platitudes and things that apply equally to Giannis, Jokic, as well as Joel Embiid.
I understand why this is such a hard argument because these guys do different things for their basketball team. But I'm telling y'all right now, if I got to take a big man first and I have to start a team and build it around him, it'll be Joel Embiid for me because I think he's an unstoppable force. Jokic at times, to me, is a little slow, a little lethargic, and when you get to the offensive end of the floor, Joel Embiid is the guy that you and Stephen A would take.
So, stopping the clip right there, Marcus Spears said a couple of questionable takes. One thing I do agree with him on is that Jokic and Embiid are asked to do different things for their teams. The one thing I really push back on is saying Embiid is a better overall player than the guy you start your franchise with from day one. First off, that argument makes no case for the 2022 MVP and has nothing to do with the season they're having in the moment. And going purely off opinion, Nikola Jokic in his career, he's been healthier and also a better playoff performer. And in regards to offensive skill, I think Jokic in that aspect has the clear-cut edge over Embiid. His scoring, he's more efficient, he's a better shooter from deep, the mid-range, even the post. He's the far superior passer, the higher basketball IQ, he's more durable. He can be the pick-and-roll ball handler, the pick-and-roll man. I mean, both players offensively, they are great, but Jokic in that respect can simply do more. And one thing I do want to point out, Marcus Spears has yet to make a solid case for Embiid being the MVP. It's all opinion, no facts, no data, no stats, no team records, absolutely nothing, just platitudes that apply to everyone.
He would be my MVP. That's the answer. I thought going off for 3 minutes talking about him would clearly show you that Joel Embiid was my MVP and the guy out of these two. But ultimately, I understand what you're saying, S.A. I 100% agree. But before James Harden got there, who was leading in the MVP vote?
Actually, Stephen A. Smith, before Harden got there, Nikola Jokic was number one in the MVP race. Albeit by a very small margin, but still, he was number one before Harden got there. And again, Marcus Spears has yet to make a solid case for Embiid being the MVP over Jokic.
Are y'all looking at these same stats I'm looking at on TV right now?
Yes.
Did Joel Embiid do enough for his team to win the basketball game?
Yes. But
So
the Time out.
Now, Marcus Spears finally points out stats and acknowledges facts. But the stats he's looking at are from a one-game sample size from an 82-game season. So to help Marcus out, let's look at both these players and their 2022 campaigns. Joel Embiid is averaging 30, 11, and 4 on 49, 37, and 82 splits, and Jokic is averaging 26, 14, and 8 on 57, 35, and 80 splits. Both players obviously are having great individual seasons. And I think some fans would argue both these players, when it comes to overall raw stats, they're dead even. But when you pull back the curtain, look at the advanced numbers, it's far more telling. Look at Nikola Jokic and his ranks in the advanced stat categories. PER, he's first in the NBA. Win shares first. Offensive win shares first. Defensive win shares second. Blocks plus minus first. Offensive plus minus first. And defensive plus minus also first. Joel Embiid, to his credit, has pretty high ranks, but compared to Jokic, it's a no contest. And before you guys start screaming, yes, wins and standings, they do matter, I agree with that. So looking at Nikola Jokic, when he plays for his Denver team, they have a win percentage of 63.4%. That in the Eastern Conference will be second only to the Heat. So if you're following, when Jokic plays his team, has a better overall win percentage than Joel Embiid and his Sixers team. And once again, the overall numbers lean toward Jokic heavily in his MVP battle. Now, looking past Marcus Spears, next up we have Jalen Rose, an actual MVP voter. And here Jalen will make his case for Joel Embiid being the MVP over Giannis as well as Jokic.
Here's something about the MVP race, and this coming from a voter, by the way. How narrative drives a lot of this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when you put those stats back up there, I want you to pay attention to something. Giannis's stats are just as good, if not better, and his team has a better record, depending on what day it is. Put that back up there for a second. So as the season progresses, there's only 0.2 points. Same boards, and Giannis has more assists. So for me, this is gonna come about standings. And by the way, if this is only about stats, the Joker will win back-to-back, as you see. But since his team isn't in the thick of the Western Conference race today, I have to give the edge to Joel.
Now, stopping the clip right there, I give Jalen Rose credit, putting Jokic in his top 3 and comparing to all these players. And unlike Marcus Spears, he pulls out stats as well as facts. But one thing I really push back on is only looking at 3 categories, that being points, rebounds, as well as assists. Basketball, the sport, is way more complicated stats-wise than those 3 categories. Looking at overall value on defense and offense, shooting metrics, efficiency, all those stats combined paint a great picture. Don't look at just points, assists, and rebounds, the 3 major stats. And giving Rose even more credit, he once again says Jokic has the best stats out of the 3. But why he puts Embiid over Jokic is their team record as well as team standings. Now, like I said earlier, when Jokic plays for his Denver team, they have a win percentage of 63.4%. That's higher than the Bucks as well as Philly. And if he played in the East, he'd be the 2nd seed, only behind the Heat. So in that regard, when it comes to overall standings and winning, I think those stats can be a little flawed, not looking at the player, their team, as well as their conference.
And so again, this race is gonna be decided in theory by who finishes the highest in the standings. And usually for voters, Jacoby, the narrative becomes who's perceived to do the most with the least. And as Philadelphia adds James Harden, that's gonna hurt that perception for those voters with Joel Embiid, because they're gonna look at Harden as being better than Middleton and Drew Holiday. So if Embiid and Giannis both continue to be dominant, but the Bucks end up in the #1 spot, but yet the Sixers end up in the 4th spot, Giannis may walk away with MVP.
So stopping the clip right there, Jalen Rose unironically makes Jokic's case for being the MVP, as he clearly says the MVP is the player perceived to do the most for their team. Jokic this year in the tough Western Conference leads his team in points, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks, as well as field goal percentage. In NBA history, he'd be the only player ever to lead his team in all those categories. Also, in addition to that, he's had no Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. only for 9 games. When talking about MVP in a literal sense, the most valuable player, Jokic, is undoubtedly that, as Embiid has Tobias Harris, he has Maxey, as well as James Harden into the mix. Giannis has Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, as well as great depth, compared to Jokic, for the most part, has average to below average NBA talent surrounding him. Now, for this video right here, that's my final point, but I do want to state one thing to close it out. We're looking at these 3 players, Embiid, Jokic, and Giannis. I think Giannis actually has the best case of winning the award. Looking at his dominance on both ends of the floor, averaging 29, 11, and 6, his all-around game has been simply spectacular. And out of the bunch, he's by far the best two-way player. But what I wanted to show in this video is how the NBA media at large doesn't give Jokic his proper due and his proper credit. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.